Welcome back on the Good Morning Artesia radio show. Don't forget we have high school basketball later today on radio and TV. The Bulldogs and the Lady Bulldogs are going to Portales, and there is a limit to the number of fans that they are going to be able to have in the gym. So what they've done is they've assigned 2 tickets per player and per coach. You got boys and girls and JV. So if you're get with your kid, are you going to use the tickets? Or are you not going to use the tickets? Let Coach Hodling or Coach Mondragon know, so that if there are some folks that do want to go to the game tonight, they can have some tickets to get in. Otherwise, it'll be on the radio today, and it'll be on the TV at ksvptv.com. So we'll get that covered. Nancy's here from the Eddy County DWI Task Force. And
good morning.
On your regular day
on my
today.
Regular day. Oh, well.
No, we're glad you're here.
Yeah, I'm glad I'm here, too. I am here, right?
Yes.
Okay, I
see
want
you.
to make sure.
It's February 1st.
Well, that's good.
Tomorrow's
So
Groundhog Day. So,
oh, is it?
Yeah. So you'll be here again.
I hadn't planned on it.
Over and over again for the rest of your life. We're going to have this conversation.
Oh, that was kind of crazy.
That would be great. Well, you brought a guest with you today.
Yes, I did.
Who'd you bring?
It's Bambi Kern. And where did you say, what's that long name? All I know is 911.
It's the Regional Emergency Dispatch Authority.
Okay, which is the agency that handles City of Artesia.
Correct.
And Eddy County.
Correct.
Anybody else that you dispatch for?
All of Eddy County except for the city of Carlsbad proper.
Okay.
Yes. So we have 24 agencies we dispatch for.
Wow, that's quite a bit.
Yes.
And the facility that you work out of is housed or located on the campus of the Law Enforcement Training Center.
Correct.
Here in town. So that means you had to pass like a background check and get a pass to get in, right?
Yes, it's actually very nice because it's a secure facility, so extra protection.
That's
Yeah,
great.
it's nice.
How long have you been working with this agency?
10 years.
10 years.
Yes, sir.
That has to be pretty exciting.
Yes.
Have you always been the director, or did you start out as just a dispatcher?
Once upon a time, she was just a kid. I knew, she was just this little person running around, and so.
Yes, I've known Nancy for quite some
however
time.
many years.
Wow.
Yes,
Not going to tell either one of our ages here.
No.
No. And I did not ask.
Yes, I did start out as a line dispatcher.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, and then supervisor, chief of operations, kind of just went up the chain.
Up the chain. So how did you get started down this career path? Had you been in law enforcement before, or emergency services?
Well, there was actually a pretty traumatic event that happened when we were quite young. Nancy and I were already family friends, and I knew I wanted to do law enforcement. When I got out of the military, I was injured, and I knew I couldn't pass a physical, but I still continued my criminal justice degree. And I just actually happened upon dispatch, and it's law enforcement adjacent, and I fell in love with it.
Mm-hmm.
And so I've been there since.
And has this agency been, did you start at the ground floor when the agency first started 10 years ago, or had it been in operation prior to your starting work for them?
About a year.
Okay.
About a year when I started, they had just finished the consolidation from the Artesia Police Department and Eddy County Sheriff's Office being 2 separate entities and coming into our consolidated PSAP.
Okay. So when anybody dials 911 from a landline, if any of those are still out there, or from your cell phone, that's where the call winds up, is at emergency dispatch.
Correct.
And so on a normal time frame, how many dispatchers do you have that are on duty?
On our day shift, we staff a little bit higher because we're a little bit busier, and we usually have 3 to 4, and on night shift, it's 2 to 3.
Okay. And they have to be there all those hours to
24/7.
24/7 to handle calls.
Yes, sir.
I'm sure you've had some interesting calls over the years, but I know Nancy wanted you to kind of talk about some do's and don'ts
Yes.
when you do have to call 911. And nobody ever thinks about that until something happens, and then you pick up the phone and you dial the 911 hoping for the answer, which it's always there.
And your brain's going 90 miles an hour trying to figure out exactly what you're going to say. And
Yeah.
And as I was explaining earlier, a lady from the police department said, at least know what direction you're going. And I'd never thought about that. I'm directionally dysfunctional, so that's a bad idea.
Well, and sometimes
But-
in an accident, you don't really know. I remember when I ran over the cow, and, the truck goes across traffic and winds up on the side of the road. And the first thing I did was I called Lana, and I said, well, I ran over a cow here in Loco Hills. And she said, what are you doing in Loco Hills? I mean, Riverside, so there's a little difference between Riverside and Loco Hills. So I'm sure you have some interesting, having to help people out, try to understand their situation they're in. So talk about some things that people should try to be aware of or be prepared to provide when they do call 911.
Okay, so the first thing we're always going to ask is where. Where can be hard, especially when you have a traumatic event happen and you're a little shaken up. And like Nancy said, directionally challenged is an issue. So one other cue you can use is where were you going to and where were you coming from? So that'll help us kind of narrow down maybe about where you are. So that's the first thing. We always need to know where. And when we train our dispatchers, we tell them we can send everyone to where, but we can't send them to what. So we might interrupt you actually to get the where before we let you finish the story of what happened.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the most important thing. Some of those things could be the cross street, the highway that you're on, and not a lot of people are familiar with the highway numbers. So name's fine. Again, where were you going to? Where were you coming from? That's good information. And we were talking earlier about mile markers.
Mm-hmm.
Not a lot of people pay attention to mile markers.
We mentioned this before we went on the air. I mean, every so often I'll see a mile marker and I'll think, well, if something happens, I can say that mile marker. But you don't often think about that as you're just driving down the road. You're having a conversation, you're thinking about where you're going or
Right.
what happened. So
Yeah, and it's interesting because when you start dispatch or I think any public safety, you start to pay attention because you understand how important that is. But that's one thing that will definitely help us. And I was kind of thinking what would help if someone was calling in a DUI or DWI or something that we would classify as a reckless careless.
Mm-hmm.
And usually you're following those vehicles. So one of the things we're going to ask you is the next mile marker you see, please let us know what it is. So that's the beginning of our conversation. And then depending on what type of call it is, there's going to be a whole bunch of other questions.
Mm-hmm. But it's good to know where you are or where you were going or where you were coming from, what highway you're on, if you can remember the last mile marker. That's all important information that would be very helpful when
Or
you get
even
ready.
cross street. What was the last cross street I passed? Maybe you were going, and I would know that you were going east on 82 and past Haldeman. Well, you wouldn't. I am headed to Lovington, and I just passed Haldeman. So that helps us get a sense of where you might be.
Okay. Are there some other do's that people should do when they're on the phone? I'm assuming don't just race through everything, rattle it off at 50 miles an hour. Just kind of calm down if you can.
We have a saying in dispatch, never in the life of telling someone to calm down. Have they ever calmed down?
Don't tell me to calm down.
Oh, and it is. That's one of the worst things we can say on the line is just calm down. So we usually say, breathe with me. Now listen to my questions. The best thing I think you can do is listen to your dispatcher. They are trained. We have over 250 certified national hours in training. We take some of the same training as police, fire, EMS. So we are professionals, and we're going to ask you questions that are very important. So listen and respond as best you can to the questions the dispatcher is going to ask you. Descriptive information is very important, whether that's a vehicle or a person. So again, thinking along the lines of DUIs, DWIs, what color is the vehicle? And make and model. Not a lot of people are familiar with make and model, so let us know. 2-door car, 4-door car, SUV, truck.
Yeah.
Does it
It
have
was
to be?
60s car, I could tell you exactly what it is. These-
Well, nowadays they
I don't-
all look alike or
so I
very
don't
similar.
know.
It's hard to
Go
know.
ahead.
And
Sorry.
even the emblems for the logos have all been morphed to where, oh, that looks like oh, wait, that's just a so-and-so. But the logos look so similar. So,
Right.
a 4-door car, 2-door car, light color, dark color, pickup truck, something like that is very
Correct.
helpful.
And one of the things that's really helpful in this jurisdiction, I think, is what we call additional information, which would be body damage, stickers that are on the windows, company logos on the side of the vehicles, because the number of reckless, careless, or speeding white trucks that we get in this area.
Gosh.
There's a bunch of those. Right?
Yes,
Yeah.
can and those things help us narrow it down. So when the officer does make contact, they can say, well, it has this sticker in the back window, so this might be the vehicle. So those are some additional things you can look for. So again, with the reckless careless, I guess that's where I thought we were going to talk about mostly today. What is it doing that makes you think that there's something going on? Is it speeding, unable to maintain lanes, driving too slowly? Have they hit anything? And another thing that we train our dispatchers very heavily on is what is reported as a DUI or DWI may not be. We have diabetic emergencies, seizures, it's medical, stroke. So that's another thing we try and take into consideration when we get those calls. So usually we're actually toning for EMS at the same time. And being a consolidated dispatch, we can do that.
Yeah.
We can dispatch the officer to go look for the vehicle, and at the same time, in our same center, we're sending EMS so that when they get on scene, they have all the resources they need.
Let me ask you this. Sometimes I'll see a reckless careless, as you describe it. Should we call it in? I don't know. I'm sure somebody else has already called it in.
Yeah, so
Can you ever have too many people phone in a reckless careless or something like that?
usually I think a lot of people think the other person has already called it in. Accidents are where we get a lot of phone calls, and we will kind of ask if you're on scene, and if you're not, we say, okay, we've got someone on scene. Reckless careless is not enough, I don't think.
Okay.
The more descriptive information you have on the vehicle, direction of travel again, and again, if you're directionally challenged, where were you going from and where are you going to?
Like that.
Yes. And and staying on the line with us. That's one thing people don't understand is important, is we're continuing to give those officers the update of the information you're giving us. So what we ask, though, is if you are following a reckless careless, maintain all traffic laws. Consider your safety above all others. So if it is swerving or moving in and out of lanes, back off. Don't get close to it. Being the detective in that situation is not beneficial. We don't want any other injuries.
Right.
So make sure you're maintaining all the traffic laws and being safe.
That would probably be one of the don'ts.
Don'ts, yes.
Are there some other don'ts? Is there information or that you don't need to hear, or is too much information, or things that you shouldn't do when you call?
You know, we really don't consider any information too much information. Everything we get is another piece of the puzzle to help that officer when they get on scene, or the EMS or fire. We will ask you questions. Sometimes people can ramble on about why they think or what they think the driver's doing. We'll redirect them if we think it's too much information in one direction or another, and get the more pertinent information. So
Okay.
the only thing is, again, if you can just answer our questions, and we will ask a ton of questions and it will annoy you, but we're doing that to get the best picture we can for
Sure.
when they get on scene.
Now, do you have to give your name?
No, you do have the right to remain anonymous when you call in, and we will ask you. We will ask you for your name and phone number, and at any time you can say, I'd rather remain anonymous, and we will definitely honor that.
Okay. How far is the technology advanced? I know there's enhanced 911, so that when a call does come in, you have information to hopefully help direct where they
Right.
are. But if you're just calling in a reckless careless, is that data, is that made available, or
There's a couple of different tools in dispatch that we use. So if you could imagine, we have each dispatcher uses 8 monitors, and we run about 10 different systems at the same time.
wow?
The enhanced 911 you speak of is phase 1, phase 2 technology that takes your cell phone and triangulates it off of towers that it's hitting, and it gives us a proximity of where you are.
Okay.
It's not maybe the most current technology, and I'm very proud to say that Rita was one of the first dispatch centers to use what is called Rapid SOS. So this technology was made by a gentleman, and he said, I called 911, and they were using that phase 1, phase 2 technology, and they could only get within 5 blocks of where he was. But why can I call an Uber and it can pull up to my toes? So he actually invented some technology and provided it free to all of the dispatch centers in the United States that works off of your GPS and Wi-Fi.
Okay.
So
on
now
the phone.
On the phone, yes,
Okay.
on your cell phone. Now this depends on your carrier and your phone and stuff, whether it gives us the information or not. But that actually gives us within feet and gives us what we call breadcrumbs, so we can see where you're moving from and to. And we will use that technology. When you call in a reckless, careless, we will use all of that technology to try and pinpoint exactly where you are.
Wow, that's pretty amazing. You only see that in movies,
wow.
right? But it's here and it's available here.
Yes.
What about services? You see the advertisements for Onstar, and I think that's a GM product predominantly, but I think it is available for non-GM products. How did those? You see the TV ads, and the OnStar dispatcher is helping the person that may have been in an accident. Does that interface or interact with Rita and your dispatchers?
Yes.
Okay.
So if you're in a collision and you have OnStar or a similar product in your vehicle, some of them have crash notification, and they actually provide pretty good data, how fast the car was going when it was hit, how many airbags were deployed, and they will actually, what we call an open mic with the individual inside the vehicle so that we can speak to them and talk with them and see what, if they're injured, again, where were they at. They do give us GPS coordinates when they call in from OnStar as well. So it is a third-party call, but then we do have direct contact with the person inside the vehicle.
That's amazing.
So it's great technology.
That is truly amazing, because even within the last few years, you still hear stories of people that get into an accident, go off the road, and it's hours before they're found or discovered. And so as more and more of this technology gets deployed, hopefully those types of incidents get fewer and fewer, and emergency services are actually able to find people a lot quicker.
Absolutely.
When they need help. So, well, this is very fascinating, because
really
like you said,
is.
most people don't think about it until do that. But if you see the term used was reckless, careless. So that could be somebody that's swerving, driving too slow, going too fast. What if you see them texting? You drive, they're on the phone texting like that. That's irritating.
That is so dangerous.
Yeah.
That is so dangerous, and I don't think our world tells us we have to be connected 24/7, but no life is worth it, ever. So if they are doing any of these things we mentioned, speeding, they're unable to maintain their lanes, they're causing a hazard, call it in. Let us know that that's what you saw them doing, and we will let the officer know and see how we can take care of that for you.
Yeah.
Do you get a lot of calls from kids?
We do. A lot of calls. We get, and actually child callers are some of our favorite. The strange thing about that is they don't understand the gravity of a situation that they're usually in, so they do report the facts plainly.
Where we get all excited.
Yes, they do.
Or we think about, there's a recording of this is going to get out somewhere, and I'm going to be embarrassed.
We do, and we get a lot of them playing with 911. So one thing a lot of people don't know is if your cell phone does not have service, they can still dial 911.
I'm glad you mentioned that, because you're right. That continues to work even on an older phone. You can still at least dial the 911, and
if it has battery life, it'll get to us. We'll get that call. So we do get a lot of kids playing, and strangely enough, it's mostly on Sundays. I don't even understand that, but it's mostly on Sundays.
Mom and Dad's watching football, so they don't care.
I was sitting in the park